I am so excited and honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I think I've been trying to get to a CUE conference for a long time, and I kid you not, every time I feel like I'm about to get on the plane, something crazy happens. And it almost happened this time, but you have been incredible with taking care of me to make sure that I got here and everything's okay. I'm especially excited to share through a lens of something that means so much to me, and that's equity. But I want to start by telling you the story of a student. A young man in school, who by all accounts looked like he had it all together. Professional parent at home, a family that is known for its success, big smile on his face every time he walked in the building. But what you didn't know, and what people didn't know, other than those closest to him, was that he was hiding a secret that a lot of our students carry, that he couldn't say out loud. So by school standards, because of a series of unfortunate events, he and his mother were considered homeless. They were living with a grandparent, which doesn't sound like homeless, but we know how schools work, and it is. He would show up every day. He would be playing around with his peers, and then by the end of the day, of course, he would go home to the same circumstance. He would give his teachers a hard time like every other normal kid. When he had assignments to do, those assignments would take place in his mother's place of work. If he needed internet access, sometimes that meant staying at the public library as long as it would stay open because he didn't have enough access at home. When he was given assignments at school, and one in particular that I remember distinctly, the assignment was for him to create a presentation to describe his home closet. He didn't have a closet. So he Googled different closets and used those closets in order to complete his assignment. If he needed to show up to school early, he would be the first one up and out of the house to make sure he showed up to school early. See, students like him didn't need us to come up with our contrived versions of grit. Grit was life, and he lived it, and he did it. And by the way, that child was my son. Let's get through this. I tell this story because for me as a parent, one of the most important things that happened to me in my career was living in as many difficult situations as some of our students. And those situations become the framework for the work that I do today. How could I fight for equity for our students, for access for our students? How could I walk in and look at my own child and then look at someone else's and fight for that other one and not fight for my own? It was an incredibly difficult experience, but it was one that I'm thankful, of course, to have had. Now, nowadays, things are differently. He has his own device. We're in a completely different situation, but this is a reality for so many. Kids that are in our classrooms every single day that are judged from the moment that they walk through the door. What is this kid like? Is he acting out because something else is going on? If he has a phone in his pocket, he should be able to do his homework just fine. That's the way we all judge them, right? But there are different situations that call for different things. For me, being a decision maker in my school district meant having to sit at a table sometimes and listen to people who completely didn't get it, talking about students in some parts of the school district who we're going to give devices to. And then listen to them talk about students on the other parts of the school district who we're not going to give devices to. Because you know what? What if? They might just pawn it, they might just break it, or oh my God, heaven forbid, they might find YouTube. And then, of course, my favorite are the dollar store assignments. Some of you might be giving those. And here's something that you may not even realize. What you might think is not a big deal with spending $5 on an assignment, for a parent who is struggling, that $5 could be the difference between gas to go to work every day or food to eat dinner at night. And I'm saying that as someone who absolutely has lived that, but more than importantly, has helped parents kind of find their way through it. The problem is we're too busy making decisions for students instead of with our students and with our communities involved. We're doing this without really understanding the world that they live in, the issues that they face, or some of the different means of which they need in order to get ahead. And the getting ahead part is rather hard. And of course, that brings us back to the decision-making pieces. Who do we serve, and how do we serve them? What about all the what-ifs? Because there's a ton of them. Some of you are dealing with that now. That is the reality of our schools and our students. And I'll be honest, I'm in a school district that doesn't always get it right. I've been in school districts forever that don't always get it right. But the most important thing that we have to do is make sure we're working towards doing it. YouTube is kind of one of my favorite conversations around this. The other day I posted a comment on Twitter. I think that I was searching YouTube for something. I don't even remember what I was looking for because I think I'm looking on YouTube for something every single day. And I posted like, how are we blocking this in schools? Blah, blah, blah. And some people were exceptionally excited to talk about, yes, we need to stop blocking these tools. We need them. YouTube is awesome. But of course, there were others who were like, but there's porn on YouTube. But there's bad things on YouTube. Well, the kids are going to do YouTube all day and they're not going to pay attention in class. My response to that is, of course, maybe if we design for learning with kids and with meaningful content ahead of them while they do it, maybe perhaps some of those worries wouldn't become a play. And oh, by the way, while we're blocking YouTube, you may as well block the whole internet because guess what? That stuff is out there everywhere. So maybe we need to have a different conversation entirely. Then we get to devices. And this one is one of my favorite tech room conversations. We have our devices, and then the next question is now filtering. Well, we are going to filter at school, but what if it goes home? And then we have tech companies who, God bless them, we work with them, but they're like, here's a solution, we're going to block it at home. And so we create these filtered devices, we send them home where the kids can't do anything but the assignment. And some of you know because you're living that existence right now. So I'm going to tell you a little secret. Are you ready? Nobody's using school devices unless they have to. So either they have to because you're forcing the assignment to be done in that way, or they have to because this is the only means they have of connecting. I was a parent who worked in a school who did not have a home computer. The computer that came home couldn't access anything. That probably hasn't been showing the whole time, has it? No. Oh, all right, cool. The computer that could access everything, the computer that we were using couldn't access anything. Couldn't do anything. I could get on the school LMS, I can open up a Word document, I can open up the PowerPoint, couldn't do anything else. When I had my own technology, the school computer was used when I had to do the school things. The home computer was used to do the learning of everything else. One of my greatest joys as a parent was seeing my son toss his Chromebook to the side that his school gave him and pull out his computer to do things that he was actually passionate about. But that was also a 360-degree moment for me because there was a time when he couldn't. The reality was he had plenty of friends at school who couldn't on this day. Plenty of friends who still can't even now because this is the space that we have created. And no, the school is not going to necessarily provide every single tool possible. It's sometimes impossible to do everything, but we have to quit putting barriers in place that keep students and people that are supporting those students from moving forward. Imagine the mother on that school computer who needed it to apply for a job. Nowadays, you can't apply for a job by walking into a location. You have to do it online. Imagine if you could change that family's entire trajectory just because you made that possibility available. Now think about the ones who make that possibility not available. That's a reality. My son and his selfie time. My question for you is how can we provide the tools needed to connect with the world, not just for our families, but with them? Do we have community forums in place? Do we have a place for them to talk to us about their needs? Do we have a way where we can creatively find ways to make these things work? What about our teachers? How are we developing our teachers to become the opportunity creators that we need? To become the ones that support our students to think beyond the classroom? How do we help them to do that? My experience was not something that is necessarily unique to parents, but it was to me. But do you have to be someone who struggles to understand what struggle is? Does empathy have to be something that comes from struggle, or can it not just be a part of who we are as people? My next wondering, of course, is about the students who are coming to us in different situations. When we are supporting our students and our learners, how are we making sure our teachers are knowing how to support them too in a climate that tells them that they are not important? We have students that come to us every day who are hearing that they don't matter, who are hearing that their lives don't matter, who are hearing that the language that they speak at home shouldn't be spoken anyplace else but at home. And what about those students who, and I've had plenty of them, whose parents sacrificed everything that they had in order to bring them to a new country to learn and to have a better future, when the climate right now is telling them that they should not? And I know all of these things might sound really heavy for a tech conference, but my whole, thinking on all of this in terms of how we connect and how our students connect is, number one, it's never as simple as it sounds, ever at all. But number two is, I don't know how to care about the equity of what's plugged in if I'm not caring about the equity of what goes in here, in the heart, here in the mind, and in the spirit. That right there is what drives me every single day of my existence as a school administrator and as a person. The students who we think have access, because we've all heard it, BYOD, if we can't provide it, they all have tools in their pockets. Anyone that's ever worked with actual students in a classroom knows that is not always the case. iPhone 3s, they're in my classroom right now. And if you've not experienced that, ask them to take their phones out, you'll see it. There's also this. What about the parents who can't afford the monthly payment to AT&T or to Sprint or to whomever to get that high dollar device that you need to access most apps? They don't have access. Or the people who are paying the regional phone service that doesn't extend beyond that service. Or the family who paid every bill they had but couldn't pay Wi-Fi that month. So that assignment that you're sending home, they have no way of doing it because, by the way, the Wi-Fi went out just as the homework started. There's so many, I'm saying this as if this wasn't my life at some point. There are so many different issues that we have to consider, and it's not perfect. And it's never going to be perfect. That's way ahead of its time. And it's never going to be perfect. But for me and my school district, this is what it has meant for me. Because I think I said earlier that we haven't quite gotten it right. I don't think anybody can say that they're doing it absolutely perfect. We can say we're trying, but we're really just not sure. But the first step, of course, is honestly identifying who you are not serving. I'm going to give you a perfect example, semi-perfect example. A few years ago, I threw my first hackathon at school. So here I was thinking, all right, I'm this administrator of color in my school district, and I'm a woman. And so because I'm going to be on television now talking about this thing we're going to do, and at our schools, the kids are just going to come. And they did not. Majority of the students that showed up were the students who were in one of the programs that we were working with, but our Black students absolutely did not. The only one that did was the one that finally picked up because we spent time that morning calling everybody we could think of to bring kids up there, because heaven forbid we have this event, and the diversity that represented our community didn't show. That was a moment again for me, because if we're not able to look at what we're not doing, who we're not serving, and who is not in the room, how can we make the steps needed in order to bring them in order to make them a part? Another, of course, situation are where the innovation happens. In our school district, we were doing coding and design thinking and projects, but those projects were happening in specialized courses in the gifted program. And if your school district has a gifted program that also serves a disproportionate group of students that do not represent your school community, hint, hint, those are the only students that are getting those opportunities as well. So my thing was, how can we take those experiences that we know are happening in these programs and bring those experiences to the greater school community? It is still a work in progress 3 years later. And of course, that I kind of segued into that. That was the next thing, was to quit letting all of the best learning happen in your specialized classes. I was on Twitter the other day, and a young lady messaged me from someplace else in the world that she was going to a STEM school, which I thought was amazing. But I was like, should STEM only happen in STEM schools and STEM programs and STEM classes? Or are we really thinking about that kind of backwards if we're not thinking about the application of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and every other acronym in between, and every opportunity that our students have to learn? And then my favorite, get your leadership connected. So I mentioned tech directors earlier, and there are some amazing ones, amazing. And so I'm just gonna put that out there now, and then I'm going to move on to this. If your peak leadership, and whether it's a principal, superintendent, tech director, instructional technology director, professional development, whomever, are not being open to innovation happening in your buildings, those people need to be connected. And I don't just mean getting them on Twitter. You need to know that goes nowhere. You've created a Twitter account, no one touches it again until we have to. Y'all know that's true. But the best way to get those people on board who haven't quite gotten there is to put them into a room where they become the outlier, where all of a sudden you, Mr. or Miss, I'm going to make every barrier possible, and we have a walled garden that we're going to live in and never come out of. You don't realize how horrible your garden is until you walk into somebody else's. And then other people who have better gardens are all a part of that community too. And then all of a sudden, you are the brown M&M in a sea of green. And what you'll see over time, without even necessarily pushing, is that person's mind starts to shift. Because there's nothing worse than other people doing things that you aren't doing. So you start to come around to do it too. But those connections have to come first in order for that to happen. And then, last, putting innovation first. In my school district, we were paying, and I'll say me, it was my budget, was paying for a specific math program for elementary that was a digital program, and it was a god-awful amount of money. And so when I looked at the data on the back end, the program itself, nobody was using it but 10 teachers. So I'm paying thousands of dollars, and I'm talking, close to 30 for 10 teachers to use a program. So this year I decided not to do that, and instead to work with our school libraries for certain grade levels, and then teachers who had innovative ideas to instead put that money into classrooms where we could serve them right now. So we have grant programs in our district, but this is a case where if they knew they wanted to try a robotics program or they wanted to integrate some type of activities into their classroom, we can serve them immediately. So really thinking about where we're spending our money and how we can do that more effectively. It's not always as simple, and of course it has to start with someone with the mindset to do it. But we need to push ourselves and our schools in order to consider where our money is going and make sure it's going to a place where it will be utilized effectively. Coming back full circle to all of this, my mindset when I'm thinking about my school district and my job is I always go back to my son. Who would I be at a time when I'm not parent, but I'm an administrator or teacher to this kid, and how can I serve them? If I'm using YouTube to learn, or I'm using social media to connect, why would I block that for him or for any students in that case? If I'm connecting with now a global community where music has become the catalyst for learning about language, why would I not bring that love and honor of language and culture into our schools? And if I understand what it's like to be a parent who is kind of on the outskirts of where schools happen, or is dealing with the issues of life outside of that, why wouldn't I let those experiences drive what we do every day so that we can maybe help change the trajectory of not just the students, but the parents and the communities that they are in? I am incredibly thankful, of course, for every struggle that I've had, every growth moment or experience that has gotten me to this point. But I don't think that I would be the person or the person in the position to help and serve if I didn't think of those things. And if I also didn't think of those students, not just my son, but every other student that needed someone to think about for them. So we get to help create those opportunities for students. We also have to push our teachers to create opportunities for themselves so that they too find their voice, they find their space, but they help our students do the same. Thank you.